So before I start, I wanted to wish you all a happy Arachtober. And it would just fill my heart so much if you turned to the person next to you and wished them a happy Arachtober. Can you please do that? Oh, thank you. No, that's great. In case you're wondering, it's not something that we've invented. It's an actual thing. So Arachtober started back in 2007 with a couple of people in the US who they started sharing some spider photos on Flickr, and then it just began exploding all around the world. And in fact, I got in touch with the two people who started Arachtober today, and they said that they wished that they could be here. So just so you know. I'm so happy to be here because spiders are so cool. And so here are some spiders that they're all found in New Zealand. And they're all jumping spiders. They're from the family Salticidae. And there's over 6,000 species of jumping spider throughout the world. Now, it doesn't matter what the jumping spider looks like, because the way that you can tell that you've found a jumping spider is simply by looking at a spider and then seeing if it turns and looks back at you with its two big eyes at the front. Now, they've got very special eyes. They can see better than any other animal of their size. So they've got these 8 eyes. They've got 6 smaller secondary eyes which function as motion detectors. But it's these 2 big eyes at the front called the principal eyes, which are of a lot of interest to us because these are the eyes that help the spider to see objects in its day-to-day life. And what they do, most jumping spiders don't build webs for capturing their prey. Instead, they tend to hunt for their prey like tiny cats. So what they do, when they see their prey, they start stalking it. And they move very slowly, very carefully. And at the right moment, they pounce and they grab, kill, and eat their prey. And because they can see so well, they leap on their prey with this well-aimed leap, and then they get their well-deserved meal. Now, I'm going to be talking to you about Portia. There's 20 species of Portia found in Africa, Asia, and Australia. I'll be focusing my talk on Portia africana. But the thing about all these species of Portia is that they prefer to eat other spiders. And because other spiders are potentially other predators, Portia needs to use a variety of strategies to capture other spiders without itself getting eaten in the process. Now, in an audience that we've got here, I would expect that there's someone here who's immediately thinking of Children of Time. Is there anyone thinking of children? Yes. Yeah. So just in case you wondered if I knew about Children of Time, yes, I do. I just wanted to make that clear because I get asked about that all the time. So I'm going to be focusing on Portia africana, which is from Kenya. And to get to Kenya, we would work in this town called Mbita. And to get to Mbita, we would arrive in Nairobi, and then we would either travel to Kisumu, which is the nearest big city to Mbita, and then we would go by car. It takes about 2.5 hours by car from Kisumu to Mbita. Or we would go the long way from Nairobi to Mbita, which would take about 8 or 9 hours. And when we arrived in Mbita, we arrived at the International Centre of Insect Physiology and Ecology, which is this beautiful campus that is situated right on the shore of Lake Victoria. Now, of course, Kenya is famous for its amazing wildlife and its big predators. But it's also got its very special little predators that I'll be talking about. And so when we're in Kenya, we would just let the spiders go wild. We would just let them build webs around our houses, and we just loved it. But if you look at these big spider webs, you would see they look like pieces of dirt. And then you'd start looking more closely, and then you'd realise that those pieces of dirt had 8 legs and these 2 big eyes at the front. And that is Portia africana. Now, just refer to Portia africana as Portia for short, just for simplicity. But in Portia's habitat, it encounters all sorts of spiders. So one of these spiders is Pycnocantha, very strange-looking spider. It looks like a tiny grass seed. And then we've got these 2 colourmorphs of Arachneura. They're the same species, it's just that one is brown and one is yellow. And we became interested in whether Portia pays attention to the different spiders it encounters. And we were interested in this using expectancy violation methods. And so I'm based in psychology, and psychologists, they're accustomed to expectancy violation experiments where you might, with a human infant, show the infant a particular object, and then you hide that object behind a screen. Now, if you lift the screen and the infant encounters an object they weren't expecting, they will stare at that object for longer than if the object just remained the same. Now, Irene Pepperberg worked with Alex, an African grey parrot, and she did expectancy violation experiments with Alex. And she was arguing that you can in fact test for expectancy violation with a wide range of animals, provided that you tailor your methods appropriately according to the species you're investigating. So, with Portia, we know it's a jumping spider. We know it can see remarkably well for an animal of its size. We know it preys by preference on other spiders. And we know it can tell the difference between other spiders. So we wanted to investigate expectancy violation with Portia. And the really nice thing when you're working with jumping spiders is that because they can see so well, what you can do is get a dead prey item, glue it into a lifelike posture onto a piece of cork, and the spider will respond to that lure as though it's living prey. So, what we did in this experiment, we got a lure, where is it? And we attached it to this pin. Now, Portia could see it, Portia began inside this tube, and it could see the lure inside that tube, from inside that tube. And it was hungry. It hadn't eaten in a week. So it was motivated to go towards this lure. So it walked up this little ramp. And after 30 seconds, we then lowered a shutter so Portia couldn't see the lure anymore. And we lowered the shutter for 90 seconds, which was very convenient because that was enough time for us to change the type of lure in the experimental trials. In the control trials, the type of lure just remained the same. And then after 90 seconds, we raised the shutter again, and then Portia either saw the same type of lure or a different type of lure. And what we found was that if Portia first saw Pycnocantha, it was significantly less inclined to leap if it then saw a brown Arachneura. So with this experiment, instead of seeing if Portia stares for longer at a changed object, we're looking at whether Portia's more or sort of less inclined to attack an unexpected type of prey. So we were seeing that there. And likewise, if Portia sees brown Arachneura first, significantly less inclined to leap at Pycnocantha. Interestingly, if we keep the prey species the same, but change the colour during the trial, we saw, for instance, Portia was significantly less inclined to leap at a yellow Arachneura after seeing a brown Arachneura, and significantly less inclined to leap at a brown Arachneura if it saw the yellow Arachneura first. So it was showing us Portia's paying attention to the different spiders it's encountering. What else is it paying attention to? Does the orientation of the prey matter? And we didn't find any evidence that flipping the prey upside down during the trial mattered. So what we were seeing here is Portia was showing us expectancy violation in the context of whether it became less inclined to leap at a type of prey it wasn't expecting. And we were seeing that Portia's paying attention to the type of prey independently of how the prey is oriented. It can mentally rotate prey. And it was showing us, Portia prefers to eat other spiders, and for us, these are just spiders, but for Portia, these are different kinds of prey, and it's behaving differently when it encounters different kinds of prey. But I mentioned to you, Portia has all these strategies, and it does all sorts of things. So one thing Portia does is it can take a detour to reach a vantage point for capturing its prey. Now, this is Portia labiata from the Philippines. And this is a spitting spider. Now as you can imagine, when it comes to spitting spiders, the back end is the safe end. And so what this Portia needs to do is take a detour to approach the spitting spider from behind, and that's exactly what it does. And Portia, the different species of Portia show us that they are very good at taking detours, including Portia africana. Now, the thing in Portia africana's habitat is it encounters all sorts of things. So spider webs are amazing. They're just full of spider action and adventure. So at these big webs, this web was occupied by big nephalanges. And so insects get trapped in the silk. Other spiders come into these webs and they come to steal some of the prey. And then you'll see Portia lurking around, and then sometimes you'll see a bird swooping in and grabbing one of the spiders. So there's all sorts of things that go on at webs. And what we were thinking is that Portia has so much going on, can it actually pay attention to the number of prey it encounters? And so what we did, we made lures from this species, Argyroides, and Argyroides is found in aggregations in Portia's habitat. And so we presented Argyroides to Portia in groups of 1 to 4. And what we were interested in was whether Portia becomes less inclined to complete a detouring task if it encounters a particular number of prey it wasn't expecting. So, we used this apparatus. It consisted of a pathway, and the pathway included 2 adjacent towers. Now, attached to one of these towers was a horizontal ramp, which the Portia could walk across to reach the lures in the scene. Portia began on top of this tower, and it could see the lures from that tower. But the thing was, the distance between the tower and the lures was too far for Portia to reach by leaping. And also, the apparatus was sitting in a pan of water, and Portia will avoid getting wet if it can help it. So, in order to reach the lures without getting wet, Portia needed to take the pathway. So, it walked down from this tower, and then when it reached this point, it could either keep going straight to exit the apparatus, or it could continue along this detouring path. But when Portia reached this point, it could no longer view the lures in the scene. The walls of the second tower were opaque. And one thing to point out about Portia is that it can often do things pretty slowly. So it took Portia about 3 minutes to walk up the second tower. And that was very convenient for us because that was enough time for us to change the number of lures in the scene in the experimental trials. So for instance, we might change the number of lures from 4 to 2. And what we were interested in was what happened when Portia reached the top of the second tower and could view a changed scene. We were looking for evidence of expectancy violation, and we were looking for it in 2 ways. First of all, we were interested in how long it actually took Portia to start stepping onto that ramp, and it was given 5 minutes to do that. And secondly, we were interested in how many actually completely crossed that ramp in order to reach the lures in the scene. Now, one thing to point out is that each spider was only tested once. And the other thing to point out is that it actually didn't matter if Portia saw the larger number at the start of the trial or at the end of the trial. What actually mattered was whether Portia saw a change in number. And what we found, this is exciting, is that in the experimental trials where the number changed, Portia took significantly longer to start stepping onto the ramp as opposed to the Portia in the control trials where the number did not change when they were presented with 1 versus 2 prey, 1 versus 3 prey, 1 versus 4 prey, 2 versus 3 prey, and 2 versus 4 prey, but not when they were presented with 3 versus 4 prey. And likewise, when we looked at the number of spiders that completely crossed the ramp to reach the lures, we saw that significantly fewer crossed that ramp in the experimental trials where the number changed as opposed to those in the control trials where the number did not change when they were presented with 1 versus 2 prey, 1 versus 3 prey, 1 versus 4 prey, 2 versus 3 prey, and 2 versus 4 prey, but not when they're presented with 3 versus 4 prey. Now, if we keep the number the same, but simply change how the prey are arranged during the trial, we saw no evidence of Portia being more hesitant or being less inclined to cross the ramp. And likewise, if we keep the number the same, but change the size of the prey during the trial, we again saw no evidence of Portia hesitating or being disinclined to cross the ramp. So it appeared that Portia was paying attention to number and not simply the amount of prey stuff it was encountering. So what we were seeing here was now expectancy violation in the context of Portia becoming sort of hesitant or disinclined to reach the lures in a detouring task. And we were seeing that Portia is sort of paying attention to the prey number independently of how the prey were arranged and the size of the prey, but it leaves so many questions. So, for instance, we don't know if Portia simply treats 3 or more prey as simply being many prey, or if we might see other sort of situations where Portia might pay attention to larger numbers. So, I have been presenting some experiments here, and I feel like I have only just scratched the surface of what Portia can do. Honestly, I have not even begun to tell you what happens when Portia reaches the edge of another spider's web. What Portia does is it uses its 8 legs and its 2 pedipalps. The pedipalps are these leg-like structures in front of its face. So it's got these 10 appendages. And it starts plucking the silk strands of this other spider's web. And what happens is the other spider can feel these signals. It can't see very well, but it can feel those signals. And so it goes wandering over to the source of these signals, and instead of being greeted by prey, it is greeted by Portia, and it is very quickly grabbed, killed, and eaten. So Portia needs to be this very flexible predator. It needs to use all these strategies because it is targeting another type of predator. It needs to avoid itself getting eaten. And so what we're arguing is that being able to pay attention to prey type and prey number and being able to make plans, these are important survival strategies, not just for Portia, but for other salticids that eat other spiders. It is just amazing. I mean, honestly. In Kenya, we've got these big predators, but we've got these amazing little predators as well, and they are just so cool. They do so much. They, honestly, with their brains. But the thing is, of course, is that these little predators are operating with brains that would comfortably fit on pinheads. It's just, oh man, honestly. So before I finish, I just wanted to quickly acknowledge a couple of the people who I've worked with. So this is Professor Robert Jackson. He's the person responsible for getting me into spiders in the first place. As you can tell, I used to be very scared of spiders. So anyway, Robert convinced me spiders are so cool. He's the person who helped me get to Kenya and work with these spiders. And honestly, the work that I presented would not have been possible without Robert. Now, I have to point out, nothing happened with the baboon. Everything was fine. After I took that photo, I said, Robert, there's a baboon. And he turned around and he wagged his finger, and the baboon turned around and it walked away. Now, this is Stephen Aloach, who is our head technician in Kenya. And again, without Stephen, none of this work would have been possible. So Stephen has been amazing at helping us find the spiders we need, helping us to look after the spiders, helping with building the apparatuses. So again, none of this work would be possible without Stephen. And just wanted to point out, I'm very grateful to you for all coming along and for sharing in my spider joy. And I just wondered if anyone had any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lots of questions. Put down your hands for 1 second. I just want to see a show of hands of who likes spiders more now after this presentation.
Yay!
Yay! I told you you'd be enamored.
Yay!
Okay. First question over here.
Hey, first of all, love your dress.
Thank you.
So the second question, my first question was, what's the sort of visual range that these spiders have? Like, can they see prey from only 1 meter away, from 6 meters? Like, how far away do I need to stand from them so they can't see me?
Oh. Well, if you consider the visual acuity of a spider, like with us, the visual acuity is how sharply we can see particular items. Our acuity is only about 7 times better than a jumping spider, I think. So it's actually remarkable. Yeah.
Thank you. And sorry, I always forget to say it. When you speak into the microphone, hold it really close to your mouth, please.
When did you realise how incredibly lucky you were that someone is funding this spider joy?
Yeah, I know. It's very, very fortunate.
Thank you so much for what you've shown us tonight. My question is around how many spiders did you test, and could your results be the result of finding a family of spiders who are particularly smart? And because this type of spider is so broadly distributed, has anyone in another location done a similar study that reinforces your findings?
Well, no one else has done, for instance, these numerical type cognition experiments, so I can't answer that. With so many of the experiments that we do, we're testing spiders in the hundreds. And the thing about, of course, the wonderful thing about the spiders that you can't do with, for instance, lions, is you can just rear all these spiders up in the lab and then test each spider once. So, for instance, with that deterring task, for that particular spider, for it, that is a novel task to solve. That's never seen it before. Yeah.
I think my question might be building up kind of on the previous one, but like all the animals you showed before, they learn from matriarch systems or from family systems, and they sort of teach knowledge.
Yeah.
Where do these spiders come up with that knowledge? Is it passed down? Is it through experimentation? And what is the success rate then for that?
Wow, that's so cool. Thing about this kind of work is that we're looking to see whether this is innate behaviour. And so even, for instance, with that first expectancy violation experiment with the different kinds of spiders, that Portia had never seen any of those prey spiders before, and it had been reared by eating spiders that didn't resemble the spiders that had been used in that experiment. So we are not looking at whether the spiders actually are learning the task. We're looking at whether they're actually showing expectancy violation on their first encounter with those types of prey.
How do you know how far the spider would jump, and how does the spider know that it can't reach the prey?
Yeah. Well, the thing, for instance, with that numerical experiment is that we actually used juvenile Portia. And they're pretty little. And so typically they can't leap further than about 20 body lengths. And so in the interests of sort of practical reasons, we had to use the juveniles so that we could fit the apparatus on a table and not in a whole room. And so, yeah.
Thank you so much. That's probably all we have time for. Oh, we can do one more.
Yeah, go on.
Was there a difference between male and female?
Often, when you're looking at sort of prey choice type experiments, we usually use the adult females because they're motivated to go for the prey because they're needing the prey for for egg production and so forth. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Another round of applause.